Kerr, morning. I'm especially pleased convening again in person in Beirut, while also welcoming participants and audiences joining us online. Beirut is a very appropriate place to meet in. It remains, in my view, maybe one of the, if not the only, spaces in the Arab world where we can discuss issues and deeply. As I said, holding this conference here is not incidental. Beirut remains central to how we understand the Middle East, not only as a site of conflict and crisis, but as a place of ideas, debate, and intellectual resilience. The title of the conference reflects the unsettled moment in which we find ourselves. The global order that emerged after the Cold War, anchored in US leadership at the time, alliance networks, trade integration, and a shared, if imperfect, to multilateral norms, is under severe strain today. US foreign policy today seems to reject the idea of global leadership as it is traditionally understood. The emphasis has shifted inward towards the survival of the United States as a sovereign republic, America first, portraying the country as under siege from both external and internal subversion. In this vision, the nation-state is the only legitimate political unit, and supranational obligations are viewed with deep suspicion. This marks a decisive break from a post-Cold War consensus that shaped American foreign policy for several decades until now. At the same time, competition among major powers is intensifying, and technological fragmentation is deepening, and multilateral institutions are increasingly unable to arbitrate conflict or enforce norms. The result may not yet be a stable multipolar order, but perhaps something more volatile, a world of overlapping rivalries, contested rules, and growing uncertainty. The Middle East, as so by these shifts, a new since October 7, 2023, and the war on Gaza. Over the past 2 years, wars have expanded, deterrence has been tested, and regions have shifted. Events unfolded at extraordinary speed, with consequences that continue to reverberate far beyond the region. Against this backdrop, today's conference will move from the global to the region and back again. Our discussions will examine the changing international order, the future of security in the Middle East, the strategic implications of artificial intelligence, evolving dynamics in Asia and the Mediterranean, questions of justice and accountability in an age of impunity, and Lebanon's trajectory within a fractured regional environment. We are proud to have with us colleagues from across Carnegie's global centers, Beirut, Berlin, Brussels, Beijing, and Washington, as well as distinguished experts in the institution. This diversity of perspectives is essential at a time when no single vantage conversation with Deputy Prime Minister of Lebanon, Tarek Mitri, a dear friend whose experience and insight are particularly valuable at this point. In the spirit of intellectual honesty and with a clear recognition of the challenges ahead, I welcome you all and look forward to a day of serious and substantive discussion. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a real pleasure and deeply meaningful one to welcome you to this conference in person time after a 2-year hiatus. In a period marked by war, insecurity, and profound uncertainty, gathering again in Beirut, as Marwan mentioned, is not something to take for granted. It reflects both the challenges of the moment and our commitment to sustained, serious engagement with the region, from the region. The title of this year's conference, Anchoring Disarray, captures a central tension of our time. We're living through a period of extraordinary upheaval, globally and regionally. Yet the anchors that once provided a sense of predictability, stability, or restraint are weakening, if not disappearing altogether. Since October 7, 2023, the Middle East has entered a new and deeply consequential phase. Over the past 2 years, wars have not only continued, they have expanded. Israeli military campaigns in Gaza and Lebanon reverberated across the region, extending to Damascus, Baghdad, and Sana'a, Tehran, and most recently. Sites were destroyed, senior commanders killed, multiple arenas of conflict became tightly interlinked. For far too many civilians across the region, this has meant widespread loss of life, emerged from this period markedly weakened. In Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran, Iran-aligned forces have come under sustained pressure, facing everything from full-scale conflict, targeted leadership assassinations, to tightening military and political constraints. A pivotal moment came a year ago in December with the fall of the Assad regime in Damascus, a seismic event. Repercussions continue to unfold today. By June of this year, the conflict had also further escalated, reaching directly into the heart of both Tehran and Tel Aviv. Yet even as destruction mounted, diplomacy never fully receded. Regional and international players Arabia and Oman have been pursuing diplomatic initiatives aimed at containment, de-escalation, or mediation, most notably the Saudi initiative for a global alliance for the two-state solution, Oman, Egypt, Qatar are looking to de-escalate in very different ways between Iran and various parties in the region, so on and so forth. Other ambitions, most notably the broader Arab-Israeli peace or the 2000 Arab Peace Initiative or Peace Plan, which was actually launched from this city in 2002, and in this room in 2002. And we have one of the architects of that peace plan with us today, and another one will be here this afternoon, Dr. Ghassan Salemi. These have remained largely aspirational. What has yet to take shape, however, is anything resembling a coherent or durable region, leaving the Middle East suspended between episodic diplomacy and persistent instability. These regional transformations are unfolding within a global environment that it itself is deeply unsettled, and we will hear more about it throughout the day. As Marwan noted, the erosion of US global leadership, intensified great power competition, and of multilateral institutions have produced a world marked by less by clear alternatives than by fragmentation and improvisation. I often say Gaza, for many, has become ground zero for the international world order. Technology is further accelerating these dynamics. Artificial intelligence is no longer a future concern. It is with us here. It's reshaping competition, surveillance, warfare, as we will hear from my colleagues this afternoon, and governance in real time, often in the absence of meaningful regulation or accountability. For regions such as ours, these shifts raise urgent questions about dependency, inequality, labor, and state power. At the same time, long-standing norms around justice and accountability are eroding. From Gaza to Syria and beyond, massive violations of human rights have unfolded with little prospect of redress so far, and I emphasize on the so far. In a more fragmented multipolar world, impunity risks becoming not an but a structural feature of international politics. This conference is designed to grapple with some of these realities. Our panels will, and I won't go through the panels, you've all seen the agenda, but we will examine many of these themes that I've already laid out. Throughout, we will return to a central question in a world defined by disarray. What, if anything, can still anchor political life, limit violence, and create a space for more just and sustainable futures for all of us? We begin this conversation with a keynote discussion featuring Deputy Prime Minister Tarek Mitri, a longtime friend. We're absolutely delighted to have you here. Few figures are better placed to reflect not only on Lebanon's trajectory within this regional and global moment, but to also raise questions about questions of power, questions of accountability, and the prospects of other futures that we have. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Tarek Mitri, to begin this opening conference. صباح الخير دكتور متري.
صباح النور.
دولة الرئيس. خليني بلش. Okay, sorry, I'll switch to English. The Lebanese cabinet of Prime Minister Nawaf Salam won confidence on February 26, 2025. Almost 10 months later, what would you consider your biggest achievement so far, and what has been the biggest obstacle? We'll begin with Lebanon and then move to broader questions.
You know, I'm a student of Max Weber, and I like typologies or ideal types. I meet people of different walks of life, and I belong to three categories, mostly the cynics, the skeptics, and the disillusioned. And sometimes it's hard to talk to a cynic. I have no taste in cynics. I spend more time arguing with the skeptics and, more importantly, with the disillusioned. And most of those who are disillusioned by the work that our government has done or was not able to accomplish, most of them had too high an expectation for us to meet. And I often have to tell them that this government is facing unsurmountable obstacles. Let's start with obstacles, not the least being pressure that is put on us that makes every support we get conditional. So the fact that there are many people, many forces, political and otherwise, in this country that are reform resistant. And I think, having spoken of disillusionment, it will be another disillusionment to think a majority of Lebanese are yearning for reform. Take the simple example of fighting corruption. You know, many Lebanese are tolerant towards corruption. They got used to corrupt civil servants.
Damning indictment.
And reforming the civil service and fighting against corruption, which is one of the priorities of our government, is progressing, but as fast as we would have liked it to be. We're committed to reforms that we had announced when this cabinet was put together, whether they have to do with rebuilding state institutions. We all know where we come from with respect to the disarray of state institutions. And rebuilding has proven to be a very difficult task, let alone reform. We have outdated administrative law that hinder the rebuilding and the reforming of state institutions. But we keep trying. We're moving in that direction. Equally, we've been working on the financial and economic reforms. And the third and possibly most important one that has to do with what is commonly called the gap law is about to see the light, maybe next week. Let's see where it takes us to. And not the least, I'm sure this will come in the conversation, our commitment to extend its territory. And I think this government has done everything possible. A very fine job, and I hope the meeting out, today's meeting and tomorrow's meeting, will be an occasion for some of the skeptics to see with their own eyes what what the army has been accomplished south of the Litani River. I know that a number of ambassadors were on a visit yesterday, and from what I heard, I haven't seen them all, but from what I've heard from some of them, I think they came up with the impression that the army is credible.
In terms of south of the Litani, but we will come back to this question in a second. I want to actually build on this point because one of the things that we've seen is the question of the state monopoly of over the arms of non-state actors, including Hezbollah. Can you tell us what is the status of where are we on this process? Maybe give us a bit more detail. What steps is the government taking to strengthen its authority? I would say not only over the monopoly over arms, but also even institutionally, because that is as important in terms of the questions of sovereignty and the power of the. To say that we are in a deadlock at this point of arms, where Hezbollah doesn't want to disarm and the pressure is on to move in that direction?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there is progress. Of course, there are those who want us to move forward more swiftly than we've been capable of. That's a debatable issue. But let me recall what has happened in the Council of Ministers in August and then in September, whereby the Lebanese Army's commander proposed a plan of 5 phases to extend the authority of the state over its territory. And in the 4 meetings we've had with him, it was very, very clear when asked, what is it that might hinder your progress? And he repeatedly said, our capabilities need to be enhanced. We are under-equipped, and he gave us many details about that. He also said that as long as Israel doesn't respect the cessation of hostilities agreement brokered by the US and to a lesser extent by France in November 27 of last year, it will be much more difficult for us to progress. He said that loud and clear. And then, people asked him, there were ministers who asked him, do you mean that respect of the cessation of hostilities agreement is a condition for you to move on in trying to extend the authority of the state? He said, no, I didn't speak in terms of conditions, but I spoke in terms of difficulties we face. And that's the reason why he had a time frame for the first phase of the army's operations and was hesitant to give a time frame for the remaining 4 phases. Okay. The first phase, that is what 1701 resolution referred to as an exclusion zone where arms, ammunitions, and armed people, save those of the Lebanese Armed Forces and UNIFIL, are allowed in the region south of the Litani. He said that this is a specific task, and he has reported to us 3 times about the progress of their work. And he said it's near complete, except in areas that are still under Israeli occupation. I think we're about to move to phase 2, where there is no time frame, but the army is prepared to start extending its authority, its exclusive authority over the region that goes from the Litani River to the Awali River, and then comes the third and fourth.
Okay.
Now, if what we hear in the media today about today's meeting and Friday's meeting, about more support coming from the US to the army, if this comes true.
You're talking about the meetings in Paris. You're talking about the meetings in Paris.
Yeah, the meetings in Paris. And then if there is an agreement within the mechanism on what has been called the verification process, that is a euphemism for that the army has near completed its work south of the Litani. If those two meetings are successful, then the Lebanese armed forces will be better placed to start phase 2 and hopefully achieve an incremental, of course it has to be incremental, progress in implementing their plan, their phase 2 of the plan.
One last question on this issue. The Lebanese government, the presidency actually, recently announced Ambassador Simon Karam as the civilian representative for Lebanon at the ceasefire, within the mechanism, basically, the monitoring committee with Israel. Israel has also appointed its own civilian representative for the same mechanism. Today, there are rumors in the press that 2 more Lebanese may be added, Sunni and the Shia, which is so what does Lebanon hope to achieve in these negotiations? Are we really appointing more people? But more importantly, I think, what does Lebanon hope to achieve through these negotiations?
I think when the president expressed the willingness of Lebanon to engage in direct or indirect negotiations, I was hoping that some progress might be achieved in implementing the agreements of November of last year, the cessation of hostilities agreement. And this is what is the main task of the mechanism, that is to oversee that to oversee, verify, and do everything possible to make sure that this agreement is respected. We Lebanese claim that that from day one, we have been strictly observing the cessation of hostilities. That's not the case with Israel. And Israel was left unpressured, and it has continued its airstrikes targeting military targets and at times civilians.
Civilians, yes.
And I think the main work of the mechanism is to make sure that these agreements are respected, unless Israel says what we hear at times and read in the media, that is the agreement of November 27, as well as UN Security Council Resolution 1701, have become irrelevant. Then the task of the mechanism will have to be reinvented in that eventuality. But also the mechanism is a space for discussion. I think there were times where members of mechanisms exchange thoughts on other issues, on border issues. And with Simon Karam being there might be such a discussion in the future.
In the future. So this could
As
lead.
to the appointing of an additional two ambassadors, I have no confirmed information.
Okay, last question on Lebanon before we move to more regional, particularly Syria. And we've seen Lebanon has faced considerable destruction in the last war with Israel. Estimates, World Bank estimates, are talking about $11 billion in damages, and this was as of a year ago. Bombings have continued. More than 88,000 people remain displaced. Yet Lebanon has seen little international support for reconstruction. Can you tell us a bit more about the obstacles and what Lebanon needs to do or what is being asked of it before any kind of support comes for moving beyond even on the humanitarian front, we haven't seen sufficient support.
I mean, we've heard alternately two conditions. At times, the reforms were the primary condition for being able to get the expected support towards reconstruction. But there were times where we were told that unless we complete the mission of extending the authority of the state over its territory, we shouldn't realistically expect any support. And this depends on your interlocutor, of course, whether they use the first condition and emphasize it or the second. We're progressing on both. And we hope that there are some Arab states and other actors in the international community that are willing to reconsider this unequivocal position that they have expressed, by which we have an obligation of results. It's not enough to start reforms. It's not enough to start extending the authority of the states, but we have to prove that much of these two tasks are accomplished.
That's quite a tall order while people are literally, the country is still being bombed and people are still displaced. So let's move to Syria, where, you recently returned from Damascus, where you met with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara and several ministers. You also saw them in Doha, I believe, in the Doha Forum. Your visit marked a shift towards a more bilateral track, focusing on long-term partnerships, strategic cooperation, at least there were discussions on energy, water, and security, coordination on border, but I think most importantly, detainee issue, which at least for the Syrian government has been upfront and central as a key demand. How do you see this translating into tangible benefits for Lebanon? What does Lebanon need to do at this point? And how will your government ensure it builds on, it creates an environment for long-term stability, particularly as we know that what happens in Syria also, it's not just about Lebanon, but what happens in Syria does not stay in Syria and will have also consequential impacts for us.
I think it took us some time, we Lebanese, to realize that we have an opportunity to build a new type of relationship with Syria, based on mutual respect, on dialogue and cooperation on equal footing. We've had 50 or more years of Syrian hegemony over Lebanon, of Syrian interference in the domestic affairs of our country. And I think we have every reason to believe that this is over. that we are entering a new phase where Syria, for all kinds of reasons I cannot delve into, that will take us more than an hour, are interested in a new relationship. President Shara, in my very long encounter with him, was very clear, saying that we cannot endlessly be prisoners of the contradictions and conflicts of the past. Let us be forward-looking. And then he sees that Lebanon and Syria's interests are intertwined in the future, whether in gas, electricity, or but more importantly, in being capable together of solving the problems that we've inherited from the past. Now, it's obvious to us, having talked to various Syrian officials, that the problem of Syrian prisoners and detainees is the most urgent problem to deal with in the eyes of the Syrian leadership. Although they're prepared to work with us on other issues, border security, border demarcation.
I was about to ask.
The return of Syrian refugees to their home country. All of these are important issues. They're willing to work with us on them. But it has become obvious to us that unless we're able to find a solution for the prisoners and detainees, we might not be able to move ahead. And we're working very hard because no matter what our political will is, and our political will is strong, we want to find an honorable solution to the problem of prisoners and detainees.
What are the sticking
But we will
points?
have to find a legal basis for that. And this is where things get a little complicated, sometimes too complicated.
Too complicated, okay. So mainly it's a legal issue above and beyond anything else for the...
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with the dialectics between the raison d'etat and the fact that we're not able to be as self-critical as we need to be. And because much of the discussion about the legal basis gets stuck in the use of words, in implicit comparison between our legal system and that of Syria. And these are discussions that do not take us anywhere.
Futile. Are we seeing movement on border delineation? I mean, we've seen we're seeing security cooperation, though there were some outbreak of fighting a few days ago at the border. But are we seeing movement on the border delineation?
Well, the priority for quite some time for both parties was to work hand in hand in securing the borders on both sides and put an end to the traffic of arms, illegal traffic of arms, and drugs. And I think we've progressed significantly.
Okay.
We have proposed to our Syrian partners that we should work on demarcation of our terrestrial borders, land borders, and they were willing to engage in such an effort. But that doesn't seem to be a priority for them. Okay. We separated land borders from maritime borders, which is a far more complicated issue because it involves other actors such as Turkey, and focused on land borders. France has offered to help, has offered its technical help. They gave us all the maps they have. They gave a copy to us, a copy to Syria, and another to United Nations. And the Syrians have told us that we might be ready soon to work on border demarcation, but they insist that we can do that bilaterally. While we welcome French help, we can do that on our own.
Okay. Maybe some thoughts on how the government is approaching the challenge of refugee return. We've heard a lot from various ministers on this issue. The question of integration, humanitarian, etc., obligations.
You know, I hate to talk about the past, but we had a breakdown in the past, a breakdown of relationship between Lebanon's government and international agencies, UNHCR and IOM and all the rest.
Especially on the question of safe and voluntary
So
return.
we needed to restore confidence and work with these organizations. Two, we needed to coordinate our efforts with the Syrian government. And that took some time. But in the meantime, there were a number of Syrian refugees that went back to Syria without being encouraged or helped by us or by UNHCR, but more in the second phase, more of them went back, encouraged by us and helped by UNHCR and IOM. And I think we're close to the 400,000 as a total number of Syrians who got back to their homes in Syria. Got back to their homes, most of them got back to demolished houses. And therefore, we approached a number of donor countries, Qatar in particular, to see if they can provide support to the returnees back in Syria. And I think there is progress in this respect.
Okay.
So we expect more to return in the coming few months. And parallel to this, the Ministry of Labor is studying the need of the labor markets and reorganizing the various procedures of granting work permits to Syrians and non-Syrians as well. And we reversed the previous order whereby a Syrian would get a residence permit from the General Security and then fail to get a work permit. We reversed this order. You've got to get a work permit first before you're entitled to a residence permit, which is what most countries do. So we're going back to normal in that sense.
Final question, how intertwined are Lebanese-Syrian relations with ongoing regional dynamics and geopolitical shifts? Does this complicate or help your efforts? Well, I mean, we'll be talking a lot more about this throughout the day, but...
Both Syria and Lebanon are encouraged by both Arab and international actors to work together. And I think we've also, although we've not discussed it, but we're facing comparable difficulties with respect to Israeli aggressions, both in here and in Syria. While we may have had different negotiation strategies, negotiation methods, but I think our fundamental position is about the same. Now, to be frank, there is far greater international and Arab interest in supporting Syria than in supporting Lebanon.
Which is ironic.
Yeah, but we shouldn't think of ourselves as competitors over support with Syria, because part of that problem can be better dealt with if we engage in economic cooperation. When I was in Syria, I met a number of ministers, economy, finance, and telecom, and Shara himself, who insistently spoke about economic cooperation. And I can give you a couple of examples, but they were basically telling us that we need each other. We may have more investments, more funds coming into Syria, possibly, but we need the Lebanese know-how. We need the Lebanese skilled human power in different areas of economic activity. And President Sharaf, for example, I said I will give you an example, spoke for 10 minutes about the importance of the ports of Beirut and Tripoli for Syria. And he seemed to be very well informed about the history, 19th century onwards. And he even said that, for Damascus, Beirut is more vital a port than Tartus. And for Homs, Tripoli is more vital a port than Latakia. Okay. Clear.
Deputy Prime Minister, thank you so much for this conversation. Please join me in thanking Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Tarek Mitri for your insights. We will also now move to the second panel with an opening discussion with His Excellency Dr. Amir Bsat, and he may talk now about the Syrian-Lebanese cooperation.